Hello, welcome. This is Mary Fran Korb with Frances DeMartino, and we're talking about childhood and the family secrets, which I say are actually lies because we don't tell people these secrets and we pretend that something else is going on. So, Frances, how was it in your life about secrets? Were there any family secrets?
It was nothing but family secrets.
Uh-huh.
The first secret, which I've talked with you about before, was the fact that my father's wife, my mother, was pregnant and living within walking distance. You could walk it from 70th Street on West End to 106th on Amsterdam Avenue. She was pregnant and his mother didn't know about it. And his mother saw him several times a week. Um, she and her daughter-in-law didn't get along, so the fact that she didn't see her didn't disturb her too much. She probably said, "How is she?" And he said, "Fine," and that was it. And then one day he knocks at the door, knock, knock, knock. There's a baby in his arms, and it's me. And he said, "Here's your granddaughter." And there you have it.
But the thing is, it wasn't just that your grandmother didn't know about the pregnancy. She didn't know about the birth. She didn't know until you were a year old. That's outrageous. I mean, it's like unheard of. It's like, what pain to think that you're the grandmother and you don't even know that this child exists. I would be so hurt. I don't think I could stand it. I can't imagine this. So that was a family secret for a while until it wasn't. But whoa, what a secret. And were there, what other secrets went on in your family of secrets?
Well, one thing to note about the previous story was that my father was financial support for his mother from the day he turned 18 and he had graduated from high school. His father said, "You're in charge of the house now." His father, who was older, put his social security check in his pocket, and my father paid the rent, bought the food, and did everything for his father and mother and his 9 years younger brother. And he did that until he was in his 50s.
Mm.
Till just before he passed away, he did all that for them. So it was something that she really couldn't complain to him about. Because if someone is your benefactor, are you going to start complaining to them? No, you'll take it out on the child. And you'll tell the story to anybody who'll listen.
Oh.
But family secrets.
Mm.
Next family secret was my grandmother gave me away to her daughter. I didn't find that out until I was 40. There was hints of it. She always, whenever she got mad at me or was mad at the situation, she'd say, "And he said he wanted to bring the children up together." I should have questioned those things, but I didn't want to make waves when I was a child. I was not a wave maker when I was younger. I became a wave maker when I got a little older. But I found out when I was 40 from her daughter that my grandmother had given me to her daughter because her daughter had one son and wanted a daughter. I looked just like my cousin, my older cousin, and I would fit in. They wanted me very badly. So my grandmother told my father, "I'll take the boy, your sister will take the girl." But then my father tortured her for 2 weeks, and for fear of losing my brother, probably, she went to Staten Island and took me back. But with all the stories she told, she never told me that I could have been brought up with that part of the family. So that was a big family secret. Nobody talked about that. And they talked about everything, but they never talked about that.
Yeah, it's also clear that there are family secrets because they're pretty ugly truths behind those secrets, and that's really sad. And that it was bad for your grandmother because she really would have just preferred to have the one child to look out for when she was in her 50s and 60s. And you would have preferred being with your aunt, and your aunt would have preferred being with you. But your father interfered and, oh my gosh, and guilted your grandmother into keeping you, which she just resented and took out on you all the more. Oh, what a mess. And yet you turned out. Look at that. So what other secrets were in your life?
There comes a biggie. Glad you asked.
Yeah.
My father was very secretive. You know how some people say, don't let your right hand know what your left hand is doing? My father's left hand didn't know there was a right. It was his MO, his modus operandi. So what was the next big secret? As I've told you, my brother died when he was 26 years old. Prior to my brother dying, my father had been hospitalized. He had some heart trouble and he had ulcerated legs. So he spent 6 weeks in the hospital and 6 weeks recovering at home. He was back to work in his little grocery store, corner grocery store, for just a few days. And my brother came home from his last big night of drinking at 9 o'clock in the morning to have breakfast with my father. He was famous for saying, I'll be right back, and then disappearing. He said, I'll be right back. He went into the bathroom and he died. He passed out. He hit the tile wall in the bathroom. He broke his neck in 2 places and he died behind the closed door that my father couldn't open. And that just finished my father off. He died, my brother died in February 1990. My father died in July 91 in the deepest, darkest hole of depression. But after my brother died unexpectedly, my uncle put a wreath on the store. Because my father had been ill and everybody in the neighborhood knew it, they thought he had died. So I get a phone call from a childhood friend's mother who'd probably been sitting on this one for years. She called me up and she started to talk. I'm so sorry about your father dying. And before I could say Joey died and my father was alive, she said, I've been thinking about your mother because I haven't seen her in weeks. I'm standing in the store holding the receiver and I go, you haven't seen my mother in weeks? I haven't seen my mother in over 20 years. Where do you see my mother? Yeah. She said, I see your mother almost every day. And where do you see her? She said she lives on 94th, 5th Street between West End and Broadway in some little rooming house or hotel. I said, does she now? I said, I live on 93rd and Broadway, which is 2 blocks over and 1 block down, 3 blocks. Wow. I said, so she's there? She said, I see your mother every day. I said, where do you see her? She said, when I take the bus. She said, your mother walks up and down West End Avenue. She doesn't talk to me, but I always say hello to her. You'd know her because she wears a winter coat 365 days a year and just wanders around. So I'm standing there. I said, thank you to the person because they'd been sitting on this for years. And I call my father and I go, hi. And he's like, hi. And I said, so I spoke to so-and-so and she told me my mother was living on 95th Street off Broadway between West End and Broadway for how many years? He said, I'm not going to talk about it. I said, but he said, I won't talk about this. He said, I'm not going to talk about it. Because my brother had just died and because he had been so sick in the hospital, I let it go. I also didn't want to alert my grandmother because if she had found that out, he would have lived a lot less longer than he did. Yes, yes. So there's a family secret for you. Wow, that's a stunner. That's a family secret of family secrets. Oh, dear God. And I wondered, did I walk into the Dunkin' Donuts and she was one of those, there are so many homeless women. And did I think that she was one of the homeless women that hung out at the Burger King on 83rd Street or hung out at the Dunkin' Donuts or, hung out at the library where they tend to congregate in the city where they can sit for a while before they're made to move or on a park bench at Riverside Park? Did I think that did I pass her in the street and just not notice her?
Wow.
When I thought about it, it was just too much. I never told my grandmother that.
No, yeah, you couldn't.
I don't know if she would have exploded or imploded, but I
Mm,
don't
it wouldn't
know.
have been good, right? Oh,
Oh,
my.
I kept that family secret.
Yeah, yeah. Ah, and do you think your father was paying for her apartment?
Yes, I
Ah,
know exactly what happened, and this explains a lot. He
mm,
probably had her living there at a New York City rent, which is why there were other problems with the business and money, and he was
mm,
supporting her. And then when he went to the hospital and was at home for 3 months, the landlord didn't get paid. He didn't know what to do with her. He must have called up a place that could take care of her, because after I was 40 and before my grandmother died when I was 41, I found out that my mother had died the day after my 40th birthday, which was one of my happiest birthdays ever.
mm.
She had died the next day in a hospital because the after effects of a stroke. And she had been living in a group home, which I called years later. Years later, it just got in my mind that I needed to call this group home. And it was years after, 12 years or
Mm.
something. And I called
Wow.
up and I said, hey, does anybody remember? And I gave her name. So
Hmm.
someone, I could just see it. Someone shouted over their shoulder in the office, hey, so and so, does anybody remember so and so? Her daughter's on the phone. And then I heard a man's voice say, yeah, I knew her. And he got on the phone and talked to me for 10, 15 minutes and telling me that she had done well in the group home, that she even had a boyfriend, that everybody liked her. And when he found out she was in the hospital because he was visiting someone else, that he went to see her.
Oh, my
So
God.
that gave me a lot of
Oh,
consolation.
yeah, absolutely. Oh, how long was she in the nursing home or the home? Not
In the
nursing,
group home,
the
I'm
group
going to
home.
guess that she probably landed in the group home after after my brother died. And no,
Yeah.
it would be after when my father got sick, and that was just before my brother died, 3 months. So
Uh-huh.
probably November 89 to before she died, which I was 40 in 2001. So that was quite a stretch.
Yeah. Wow.
11, 12 years.
Yeah.
So probably she was evaluated somewhere and then put into the group home, which the man told me she was quite happy in and it got along well in. And that really,
Oh,
really
that,
made me feel happy.
oh, for sure.
Unfortunately, she was buried in Pottersfield, which makes me very unhappy.
Mm,
But at this point, I'm living across the country.
yeah.
There's not much I can do about it now after so
Right.
many years.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Well, thank you for sharing that. Is there any other secret you'd like to tell?
My, there's so many.
Mm,
Those are the main ones.
okay.
Well, there was a secret about my brother.
Mm,
Um, my grandmother was very secretive about his anger. And
mm,
I remember I tried to intervene when he was drinking. So that was like, I don't know if you'd call that a family secret or family denial, but he
mm,
began showing signs of being an alcoholic at 19. It was like from the first drink he took, the first drug he tried, everything was just an addiction. And he kept it a
mm,
secret for a long time from everyone. I have no idea how long he was getting high. But I remember after I got married, he was about 19 or so.
mm,
And I happened upon him as I was out and about one day, and I saw his eyes red, and I'm like, wow,
oh,
that
oh,
was a secret I did not keep with my father, because I went to the store and a couple of days later, I said, I have to tell you something. I said, there's a problem with Joey. He was stoned out of his mind. And I said, he's not new to it.
yeah.
So my father was like, oh no. And then it just became denial. As it got worse and worse, I tried to get him to do something about it. And
Mhm,
there was a huge incident when his best friend was murdered,
mhm,
and my at a party that my brother was invited to.
Oh, my.
And what had happened is the kids in the neighborhood went to this party, and his best friend was at the party. There was a fight at the party, and his friend was murdered. My brother had decided to go to the party a little later, and he took a walk before he got on the subway and went to the party. And he walked in after all the whole
It's
violent
horror.
thing and the
Yeah.
murder, and he found his best friend lying on the floor dead. He never recovered from that,
Oh,
and
my.
his drinking accelerated, and it ended up with him dying. But before that, he was on Amsterdam Avenue. He was a big guy, picking up those big metal old style garbage cans and throwing them at passing cars. 3 of our delivery boys went, grabbed him, dragged him into the store, and we locked him in the basement where he was screaming and banging on the door like a lunatic. So my father and I are alone in the store after hours. He's banging on the door like a lunatic to be let out of the basement. And I look at my father and I said, you have to call someone and do something. He said, I can't do it to him. He said, I did it to your mother. He said, you don't know what it is to do that to someone, to send, he had sent her to a hospital, to an institution that could take care of her in her state. And it was the hardest thing that he ever had to do. One, he had to admit that something was really wrong. And that, I can tell you, was the hardest thing. And if he did that for my brother, he would have to admit that something was wrong. When I tried to tell my family, we got to do something, they said I was mean and calling my brother a drunk.
Wow.
I was
Wow.
mean.
You were
I
mean.
wanted to get rid of my brother. I had wanted to get rid of my brother from day one. That was how my grandmother viewed it. They just thought he drank a little too much. Then he died, and everybody was going, why didn't we do something? And I absolutely said nothing. I just sat quietly because I was not going to be part of the I told you so crowd that I grew up with. But everybody was saying, why was nothing done? And why was in this? And what was that? And people were asking my father, you saw and this and that. And my father just collapsed into a depression, and that was the end of that. So that was the big family secret.
Yeah.
One of the big family secrets. I got 1 million of them.
Yeah. And were you taught to hide secrets? I know the
You
answer.
had to ask that one, right? Okay. So here comes another story. So when I was 12, 13, 14 years old, I wanted to go to the movies and do some things on my own. And I was kind of kid who liked to do things alone. And my brother was the same way. He liked to go to movies and museums and things like that alone. He liked to go to places alone. So my father said, you can have the money for it. But if you mention to your grandmother that I gave you $1, if you mention to her that I let you go somewhere, if she ever finds out anything, because he had one mission in life. He just didn't want to listen to his mother's voice. I don't know what it was. It was because she asked questions, she nagged this, that, and the other thing. He didn't want to hear her voice. So he said, if I have to hear anything when I go home, you'll never, ever get to go again. And I knew him. He would do it. So what I did mostly as a kid in those preteen, teen years is I came home. I said hi to my grandmother. I went in my room. I closed the door. I came out the next day. I went to school. I said, hi, how are you? And that was it. And then I went to work. Eventually I started working in the store more and more hours because as I got older, like 13, 14, around 15, that's when I really began working a heavy schedule in the store later in high school. My father worked 7 days a week. He only closed on Christmas because he couldn't get anybody to work it.
Wow. Yeah, my goodness. You were his right-hand person. So, oh my goodness.
He called me the necessary evil. See,
Evil,
I
right?
asked questions too sometimes, and he didn't like that. As I got older, I began to question him a bit too, as to the why and how and where, what's going on. And he didn't like that either.
Yeah. And there were money secrets as well in your family. So
there were big money secrets because he had to pay for he must have been paying those little hotel rooms or boarding house. It was Manhattan.
Yeah,
He must have been supporting her totally. He
yeah.
had to be.
Nobody else was. Yeah,
Nobody else was.
yeah. Wow, Frances, what a story. I so appreciate your sharing because I know it takes a lot to bring it all up, so just be extra good to yourself today. And
Thank you.
yes, yes, thank you. So we'll talk again.
Definitely. I wouldn't miss it for the world.
Oh, thank you.